Part 1. Spiritual Beings Who Sing. Across continents and over the centuries, human beings have pondered the possibility of there being spiritual beings from higher worlds who sing and play musical instruments. Nearly every culture and civilization in human history has imagined that beyond this visible world, there are spirits, such as gods and angels, who sing and play musical instruments in other realms. Music has been called the universal language, and that language is viewed as being one which extends beyond the present material world and into the habitations of otherworldly beings. Let's explore what various cultures and religions have believed about spirit beings who play music. Let's look in depth to how great of an extent human beings connect music with the sacred throughout history. Part 2. Ancient Greece, the Muses and Apollo. In ancient Greece, being artistically inspired was seen as divine communication. The Greeks believed in the Muses. They were seen as 9 divine sisters who presided over the arts. These otherworldly women appear in the writings of Homer. To the Greeks, the Muses weren't symbolic metaphors. They were believed to be real divine beings who sang on Mount Helicon and Mount Olympus. The Muses were believed to inspire poets, musicians, and historians by whispering melodies and stories into human minds. They are the origin of our word music. The Greeks also believed in Apollos, who was believed to have a supernatural stringed instrument called a lyre. He'd play this instrument and bring harmony to the entire universe, to all of nature. The Greeks believed in the music of the spheres. They believed the planets moved in celestial harmony. Where did they get this idea from? Let's move from myth to religion now in our study. Part 3. Angels in Judaism and Christianity. In Jewish and Christian thought, angelic beings are often seen as being musicians. In Christian theology, angels surround God's throne with harps and songs. The 24 elders all have harps, as do the living creatures. During the Renaissance, religious painting artists often painted angels playing various musical instruments. Heaven was imagined as being filled with music and sound. The idea of there being massive choirs of angels that sung shaped Christian music for centuries. John Sebastian Bach suggested that human music is an echo of the music of these beings on higher levels of existence. Bach seen that what he was doing was working in participation with the ongoing heavenly anthems. He was working in tandem, in his opinion, with the angelic world. Part 4. Islam's spirit world musicians. In Islamic theology, they don't depict angels playing music the same way that Christian art does. However, in Islam, angels are still associated with sound and musical instruments. In Islamic belief, the angel Israfil will blow the trumpet to signal the day of judgment. Sound marks the end of creation and the renewal of creation. In Islamic mysticism, particularly Sufism, music is sometimes seen as a reflection of divine harmony. The 13th century poet Rumi wrote about music as a spiritual force. The reed flute in Sufi symbolism represents the soul longing for reunion with the Creator. In some Sufi traditions, properly used music is seen as a power that helps drive away spiritual amnesia and helps the soul remember its otherworldly origins. Sound is an awakening force that awakens something eternal within a person within this way of thinking. Part 5. Hinduism, Gods as Musicians. In Hindu traditions, music is deeply embedded in divine imagery. The goddess Saraswati is almost always shown holding a stringed instrument. She is seen by Hindus as a deity of art and wisdom. Krishna is a being playing a supernatural flute in the Hindu way of thinking. This flute is seen as being one which will enchant humans, animals, and even nature itself. His music is seen as being transformative. The Hindus have texts which describe spiritual music, such as hymns, as being something that is revealed rather than what is composed. Sound itself is seen as being the primordial vibration of the universe. They have a concept called Nada Brahma, which means the world is sound. In their way of thinking, divine beings from the spirit world don't just enjoy music, they generate the sound that sustains existence. Part 6. Musical spiritual beings of the Chinese. In ancient China, music was believed to reflect cosmic order. Confucian philosophy taught that proper music cultivated moral harmony. Disorderly music reflected spiritual imbalance. Chinese mythology speaks of heavenly beings and immortals that dwell in celestial realms filled with music. Court rituals were designed to mirror the harmonies of the heavens on earth. In Japan, humans actually perform music and dancing specifically for the spirits. When they do this, they actually mimic the music and dancing of the gods. So as you can see, there are many religions which believe that there are musical beings in other dimensions. Part 7. The Universal Language. It is astounding that it isn't just one culture that had a belief that spiritual beings make music and play musical instruments. It's that nearly all of them did. Civilizations separated by oceans with no contact with one another basically express the same type of ideas: divine choirs, harp-playing celestial beings, flute-playing spirits, and cosmic vibrations. Cultures across history have visualized the universe and spirit world as a living, dynamic symphony. People have seen music as being a way to connect with something greater than ourselves. It's an intriguing thought, isn't it? Somewhere beyond that thin veil which separates the material world from the spiritual are a vast host of otherworldly beings, singing eternal anthems in ecstatic, everlasting glory. Part 8. Introduction to Musical Spiritual Villains. As we gaze into the looking glass and into the past darkly, in regards to music, in addition to finding glorious things, we also find something very disturbing. Listen carefully, because at this time I'd like to take you on a journey across time and around the world. A journey into a mesmerizing yet unsettling idea shared by many religions and cultures. This would be the belief in spirit beings who use music not for harmony, not for healing, not for joy, but for deception, temptation, and destruction. Across civilizations, there has been a persistent warning that has echoed through the chambers of time. In sacred texts and in legend after legend, we are alerted to the fact that dark and disharmonious entities seek to put the universe, the world, and even mankind out of tune with universal harmony. Part 9. Lucifer, the first musical villain. As we gaze past the boundaries of the world of man and into the past darkly, we don't have to look into the infinite expanse very far to witness the emergence of the first musical villain. As we look into the ancient writings of Isaiah the seer, we find that Lucifer was cast down out of heaven, and the noise of his viols, which is a stringed instrument. Notice it's noise that he makes. Ezekiel makes note of the fact that Lucifer was the workmanship of the universal Creator. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Lucifer's designer, and therefore the first musical instrument maker that we have record of, is the same being who set galaxies in motion. So the origin of instrument making does not have its foundation in human beings on planet Earth. Part 10, the Sirens. In other writings, those which can't even begin to be compared with the scriptures, we see the theme of musical villains echoed. Although these other writings are just myth, there seems to be a thread of universal truth in them. In Greek mythology, we meet the Sirens. These are creatures who dwell on rocky islands, luring sailors to their deaths. Their power was not brute force, it was song. Their voices were described as being irresistibly beautiful. Sailors who heard them would abandon reason, steer towards the music, and crash upon the rocks. Sirens depict an early example of a musical villain. They represented spiritual beings whose melody concealed mortal danger, showing that, musically speaking, not all that glitters is gold. Part 11, the Greek god Pan. The Greek god Pan could cause sudden, mindless fear of irrational rage in soldiers and travelers, often causing enemy troops to flee. He was known for his sexual violence. Pan was famously lecherous, frequently chasing, harassing, and attempting to violate nymphs. He was known for his cruelty. In some myths, he ordered his followers to tear the nymph Echo to pieces out of anger. He had disruptive nature. As a god of the untamed wilderness, he represented chaos, spontaneity, and unbridled impulse, opposing the order and rationality of city-states. Christians later viewed Pan as a symbol of immortality or even the devil, due to his goat-like appearance, hypersexuality, and wild nature, which stood in contrast to many Christian values. Part 12, the Pied Piper. As we have been seeing throughout history, there are archetypes of musical villains that in certain ways seem to play themselves out from generation to generation. One of the most enduring legends is that of the Pied Piper. Here we have a mysterious dark figure who outwardly wears bright clothing and appears to be witty, charismatic, and charming, festive and friendly. Yet inwardly he is sinister. First he enchants the town rats, and after that the children. He hypnotizes the children with his music, and one day while the parents are busy at church, he leads them away to never be seen again. He leads them away from their church, away from their parents, and away from their hometown with promises of a land of candy. Parents, does this sound familiar to you? It's as if the writer of this story recognized a universal truth that would play itself out over and over throughout the vast expanse of time. Part 13, Native American Musical Villains. Native American traditions also contain cautionary tales about song. Amongst Native Americans, there are also tales of musical villains from the spirit world. Some tribes have stories of trickster spirits who misuse song or mimic sacred chants for deception. Native Americans are known for their rain songs and their drum beating in ceremonies. They are also known for their sacred dances. They seem to have a strong intuition concerning the relationship between music and the spirit realm. As has been mentioned, they recognized the good and sacred aspects, but also left room for the idea of there being spiritual musical villains that they called tricksters. Part 14. Musical Villain Conclusion. Throughout many cultures, we find the common thread of the idea of musical villains. The siren's song was beautiful. The devil's viol was mesmerizing. The Pied Piper's tune was irresistible. The warning embedded in these songs and these stories are subtle yet profound. Evil does not always appear haunting and hideous. Sometimes it sings. It's interesting that there seems to be a profound musical knowledge since ancient times. There were and are both good and evil musical spiritual beings. Music itself was there. The spirit behind it determined its moral and spiritual character. This trend continues in the sphere of human beings, as we shall see. Part 15. Ancient Man and the Music of the Spheres. In the hush before dawn, when the sky is neither night nor morning, the ancients whispered of a harmony too vast for human ears. A music not played by human hands nor sung by the throat of man, but woven into the turning of the heavens themselves. This was the music of the spheres, the hidden hymn of the cosmos. There were many people who subscribed to this concept: astronomers and theologians, mathematicians and sages, poets and kings. In fact, some of the most recognized people in human history. Part 16. Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is a name which was found on the Rosetta Stone in Egypt. It is thought by some that he taught ancient Egyptian priests musical knowledge. Clement from Alexandria attributes to Hermes a book called The Music of the Gods, which was in the possession of ancient Egyptian priests. To Hermes, the stars were not cold and distant fires burning on the horizons of space, but were like mathematical beacons moving according to divine proportion and perfect harmony, like music across the vast expanse of the heavens. According to researchers, his ideas concerning the stars is that they were not silent, but that they resounded in the invisible depths of space like tones in a celestial lyre. According to this train of thought, the harmony governing the heavens also vibrated within the human soul. To know oneself was to come into harmonic resonance with the greater musical chord of the universe. This mysterious figure, who disappeared from history and who was written about by the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, interestingly enough, was thought by Sir Francis Bacon and Sir Isaac Newton to be the same person as Enoch in the scriptures. Part 17. Enoch. It is interesting that in Jewish tradition, Enoch is said to have ascended through 7 heavens. In those places, he is said in old Jewish literature to have beheld angelic choirs. This is not recorded in the scriptures, but it is found in other literature and writings of Jewish rabbis. It is interesting that in some of the best-known literature of the Jewish people, once again, the concept of spiritual beings that sing and play music is reiterated. Part 18. Pythagoras. The Greek sage Pythagoras believed that the planets moved through the heavens according to ratios. He believed that the orbit of each planet generated a tone determined by its distance and speed. Pythagoras conceived the universe to be an immense stringed musical instrument, called the celestial monochord. Its single string connected to the upper end of heaven and its lower end to the earth. All things have a voice and are singing to their Maker. He believed that man fails to hear the melodies because his soul is imprisoned in the illusion of material existence, and that when man is liberated from the sense limitations of the lower worlds, the music of the spheres will again be audible as it was in the Golden Age. Part 19. Plato and the World Soul. The Greek philosopher Plato spoke of an underlying mathematical structure called the world soul, woven from harmonic intervals. He said that the creator of the universe shaped the cosmos according to musical proportion. Plato said he crafted reality like a divine musical composition. In his opinion, the stars were set into motion like notes on a musical staff. They were geometry made audible. The study of astronomy was a contemplation of divine harmony. Part 20. Socrates and the Tuning of the Soul. In his book, The Republic, Socrates spoke often of the soul's attunement. He warned that discord in one's inner life was like a stringed instrument out of tune. He believed that musical harmony was symbolic of justice. For him, ethics itself mirrored the heavens. When a person acted virtuous in a righteous way, obeying divine and universal law, they were coming into alignment with the cosmic order of the universe. It was therefore an inner harmony likened unto music. Part 21. Johannes Kepler, The Harmony of the World. In 1619, the great astronomer Johannes Kepler wrote a book called The Harmony of the World. In this book, he expressed how he believed that the solar system was not just a mechanical structure, but was actually a divine musical composition of sorts. Kepler thought the planets sang as they moved around the sun, but not in an audible way. He believed that each planet's orbital speed corresponded to a musical note. He theorized that because planets move faster when closer to the sun and slower when further away, each planet had a range of notes. The ratio between its fastest and slowest speeds formed a musical interval similar to a third, a fifth, or an octave. Kepler described the planets as if they were voices in a sacred choir. Saturn and Jupiter were bass voices. Mars was a tenor. Earth and Venus were altos. Mercury was a soprano because it changed speed the most. Kepler arranged what became referred to as planetary voices into a six-part cosmic harmony. He believed that at rare moments, during certain orbital alignments, the planets formed nearly perfect musical harmonies. Musical harmony is governed by the same mathematical ratios as the ratios that govern planetary motion. Part 22. The Great Pyramid in Music. There are monuments, and then there are musical instruments. Rising from the golden sands of Giza, the ancient stone mountain called the Great Pyramid appears silent. Yet to those who listen with more than just ears, it hums, it vibrates, it remembers. The ancients did not merely stack stone upon stone in the building of the Great Pyramid. Metaphorically speaking, they tuned it like a giant instrument. Ironically, the Great Pyramid is built to a scale model of the Earth. It is proportioned at 1 to 43,200th of the size of the Earth. This number echoes the mathematical cycles and precisions of time measured not in hours but in ages. The Earth sings in rotations, in revolutions, in orbital harmonies, and the pyramid mirrors that cosmic ratio in stone. Music is born from proportion. For example, a string divided in half produces the octave. A string divided into thirds produces a 3-to-2 ratio, which is a perfect fifth. In fourths, a 4-to-3 ratio. These are not just sounds, they are relationships, mathematical relationships. All of these musical ratios are found in the Great Pyramid, in the ratio of its height to half of its base, in the slope of its faces, in the angles formed by its chambers. Each interval of the 12-tone music scale is reflected in number, in angle, and in length within the Great Pyramid. There are 12 intervals and 12 divisions of the octave. The pyramid is also an expression of 12-fold harmony. It has 4 faces and 3 dimensions. Some believe that in the pyramid's mathematical formula lies the full chromatic music scale, not heard by the ear, of course, but perceived by the mind. The number 432 is stamped all over the Great Pyramid in its measurements. Part 23, The Song of Stonehenge. There are places on earth where the veil between worlds feels thin, places where stone remembers and silence sings. On the wind-swept Salisbury Plains of England, researchers at the Royal College of Art began pondering, what if the great monoliths of Stonehenge were never meant to sit in silence for thousands of years? What if there was a hidden song within them that could be unleashed? Their studies explored the acoustic properties of the bluestones within Stonehenge. When researchers tapped the bluestones of Stonehenge with specially designed hammers, the stones responded by ringing out like ancient bells and gongs, producing sustained, haunting tones. This led them to the conclusion that Stonehenge may have been a giant musical instrument laid out upon the face of the earth, a titanic lithophone. There is a certain number that mysteriously appears across many cultures, and that number is 432. According to a number of different researchers, 432 Hz is a frequency that, in their opinion, resonates harmoniously within the human body and with the cycles of the stars of the zodiac. When researchers examined key measurements and proportional relationships within Stonehenge, they found that alignments and numerical harmonics demonstrated the number 432. There are 60 stones in the outer ring of Stonehenge. There are 25,920 years in a great year. What a great year is the amount of years it takes for our sun to orbit around the great center and travel through all signs of the zodiac. If you take 25,920 years and divide it by the number of stones in the outer circle of Stonehenge, you come up with the number 432. This would lead to the conclusion that each of those stones in the outer circle represents a time period of 432 years. The number 432 is no random number. It is woven right through mythic timekeeping, from Vedic cosmology to astronomical cycles. That number is elegant, divisible, and symmetrical. The number 432, you'll remember, is also stamped in the Great Pyramid in Egypt. It is a number that comes up in the tuning for musical instruments invented by Pythagoras. Pythagoras is the one credited in modern textbooks for being the inventor of the modern musical scale. There is a type of instrument tuning that many people believe is best for the human body, and that tuning is known as Pythagorean tuning, and this is also known as 432 Hz equals A tuning. There are many people who will tell you that when instruments are tuned in that frequency, they are producing tones which are more correctly aligning with the frequency of the overall cosmos. Long before telescopes, there was a secret whispered by ancient sages, the music of the spheres, a cosmic symphony. It was the notion that planets move according to mathematical ratios akin to musical intervals. They believed that the solar system is not itself silent, but structured in harmony. A grand celestial music box beyond the limits of human hearing. Part 24, the Greek Parthenon. The Greek Parthenon is reported to have been completed in 432 BC. The facade of the Parthenon presents an 8:17 ratio. There are 8 columns across and 17 along the side. These numbers are not an accident. These numbers create proportional relationships approximating harmonic intervals. The ratio 1 to 2 forms the octave, the most perfect consonants. The ratio 2 to 3 gives us the perfect fifth. The ratio 3 to 4, the perfect fourth. Within the Parthenon's dimensions, scholars have noticed recurring proportional relationships hovering near these musical intervals. The ratio of the building's width to its height forms a musical proportion. Some have called the Parthenon music in stone. Its proportions mirror cosmic order. Its geometry reflects celestial cycles. Its harmonic architecture echoes the structure of sound itself, a reflection of the music of the spheres. Part 25, Solomon's Temple. In the hush between history and myth, where candlelight trembles against ancient stone, there stands a vision that seized the imagination of one of the greatest minds in human history, that of Sir Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton believed that Solomon's Temple was a mirrored image of the universe itself. He believed that the universe exhibited certain mathematical ratios in its spacing, and that King Solomon's Temple reflected those exact musical proportions and its spacing between pillars, chambers, and etc. In other words, in Newton's opinion, the temple was a small-scale model of outer space. Newton said that Solomon's Temple was, quote, framed according to the proportions of the heavens. To explain this more clearly, he had the idea that the stars in the heavens were laid out in certain recognizable patterns. He seen that Solomon's Temple exhibited those same exact patterns and numerical proportions. It would appear as if he came to the conclusion that the same being who laid out the entire universe also laid out the blueprint for Solomon's Temple. Newton also believed that the geometry of Solomon's Temple was a silent hymn. The entire structure was tuned to the music of the spheres in his eyes. Newton said the temple was a physical representation of the music of the spheres. To him, the 3 rows of pillars and the temple's court followed a progression that corresponded to musical harmonies. He reportedly stated that the 3 rows of pillars served as a silent musical instrument. He believed that those who could measure them correctly would discover that they revealed the fundamental frequencies of nature and the mathematical mind of the Creator. By applying the length of the cubit to the temple's length and breadth, he found that the resulting areas created harmonious constructions similar to a monochord. When it comes to the altar in the temple, in the same way that in music a central note anchors the scale, so in Newton's mind did the altar. Newton saw the altar of burnt offerings as the tonic or center of the temple system. To Newton, the distances from the altar to the various gates and chambers in the temple were seen as representing the harmonic intervals of the planets in the solar system orbiting the sun. Another researcher during Newton's time said that the designs of the temple were built on Platonic musical harmonies. Newton said the temple's symmetry was mathematical proof of the harmony of the universe. Newton seen Solomon's temple as being a silent song directly connected to the music of the spheres. Part 26. Gothic Cathedrals and the Music of the Spheres. Isaac Newton publicly stated that he believed that Solomon's temple was a reflection in stone of the music of the spheres. Where did he get the idea to even look for music of the spheres in the temple? How would someone have come to such a conclusion to look for something like that in the first place? Is it true? You'll have to come to your own divinely directed conclusions. I'm not personally making any claims here. I'm just reporting historic ideas. Here is something very interesting that surfaces from the historic chronicles of the past. It's a matter of historic record that the Knights Templar excavated under the ground where Solomon's temple had once stood. They did archaeological excavations there for 9 years. When they returned to Europe from Jerusalem, there were rumors circulating all over Europe that the Knights Templar had dug up secret treasures and information on the temple grounds that they weren't telling anybody about. People thought the Templars were keeping secrets. This could have been any number of types of secrets. Solomon's wealth secrets, Solomon's architecture secrets, music of the spheres secrets. Solomon was considered the wisest man outside of Christ who had ever lived. So this could have been any number of different types of wisdom that some people claim the Templars had become privy to. Solomon was considered a great architect. However, when you look in the history books, there's no evidence reported that the Templars ever found anything on their digs in Jerusalem. Part 27. The Music of the Spheres in the Baroque Period. During the Baroque period, a man arose by the name of Joseph Sauver, who lived in the late 16th and early 17th centuries. Sauver was a mathematician in the court of King Louis. Sauver is the first person known to have studied frequency, vibration, and resonance as a measurable phenomenon in modern history. Some researchers call him the father of acoustics. Sauver advocated middle C, the foundational note of Western harmony, to be tuned at 256 vibrations per second, which he believed to be scientific pitch. He believed that this proportion aligned with physical law. This is very interesting because middle 256C aligns perfectly with 432 Hz equals A tuning. The tone 256 doubles cleanly into octaves, just as the planets double their orbital patterns. Sauver's lifetime touched the lifetimes of Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. It cannot be proven what tuning these great composers tuned their symphonies in. However, it is at least a great possibility that they may have used A equals 432 at least some of the time, and this may have been due to the fact that they lived at relatively the same time as Sauver, who was considered the greatest acoustic scientist of their day. He considered 256C or A 432 tuning scientifically correct pitch. During this time period, many of the great composers such as Bach and Beethoven still believed in the concept of the music of the spheres. During the Baroque period, music was still built on the belief that number, tone, and star are not separate things. Part 28. Music of the Spheres in the Modern Day. Imagine for a moment that the universe is not silent, not a cold vacuum, nor a dark sea of emptiness. Instead, picture it as a living, breathing symphony with musical scores knit into the very fabric of time and space. As we have seen, the ancients viewed the seemingly endless galaxies as an ordered musical composition. They believed in a cosmic harmony beyond the ears of the largest percentage of mortal men. For centuries, men dreamed of hearing it. In the last century, many of the inhabitants of Earth have forgotten about the music of the spheres. Suddenly, something strange is happening around the world. Pythagoras once said that one day the music of the spheres would again be heard. It appears as if, around the globe, aspects of this ancient melody are once again dawning within the consciousness of certain people across continents. Researchers have recently discovered that the sun is actually making a type of music. The sun is full of waves. It has acoustic oscillations and various currents that ripple through its layers like a bell struck from within. Scientists can't hear the sun directly with their ears, but they listen with instruments that record surface motion, revealing oscillations that sound, when they are sonified, like a deep resonant hum, like a ringing from beyond the veil. The huge sphere of sun becomes like an 864,000-mile-wide cathedral of sound, the sounds being generated by wave motions deep in the star. NASA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory has furnished information that gives researchers the ability to hear these waves after they have been transposed into the audio range that humans can hear. These sounds represent the physical vibrations of the solar plasma echoing through the sun like resonant chords. From the sun, we turn outward to the planets themselves. Scientists are now measuring electromagnetic waves from planetary magnetospheres and are transforming those waves into audible tones through a process called sonification. Earth's magnetosphere has been shown to vibrate like a giant musical instrument. These vibrations behave exactly like resonances in musical systems that can be audified. The Earth itself becomes part of an enormous cosmic instrument. It pulses, rings, and sings. Another scientist named Donald Kurtz is studying cosmic rhythms. They are like music written into the very heartbeat of stars. It evokes the ancient idea that the universe resonates like a vast celestial symphony. It has been said that we should think of the sun's vibrations like cathedral bells. In fact, it has recently been discovered that it's not just our sun that is ringing like a bell. A great symphony is unfolding before our very ears. A vast array of billions of stars are ringing like ancient bells across the entire cosmos. And we should ask this question: for whom do these bells toll?